Today I'm going to talk about one of the craziest things to ever happen in broadcast media. On November 22nd, 1987, somebody hijacked the signal of a sports station in Chicago and showed this. It's creepy stuff, right? The funny thing is that a sports commentator had to come back from that and just start talking about the Bears again.
Well, if you're wondering what's happened, so am I. Actually, the computer that we have running our news from time to time took off and went wild.
Oh, sorry, our computer, which is barely powerful enough to play Pac-Man on, just generated an incredibly realistic-looking man in a mask who was laughing menacingly at you. Yeah, let's just ignore that and go back to talking about football. You can almost imagine the Chicagoans who are at home too, just seeing it like, what's this? That's not the Bears. Where's Ditka? It gets weirder though, because about 3 hours later, the same person hijacked a different station in Chicago and showed a full 1.5 minute long video there.
Some dry cleaning.
That is a seriously unsettling video. But the craziest thing is that to this day, we still have no idea who did it, and we still have no idea why. That's what makes this stand out. There have definitely been other times where people hijacked TV stations or radio stations, but usually they're for some sort of political or artistic reason. It's usually pretty easy to figure out who did it. I'll talk about a couple of them for context, and also just because they're interesting. Probably the most famous one is the Captain Midnight example. This was when some guy named John McDougal actually hijacked the satellite that broadcasted HBO to the entire East Coast and displayed this image for 4 minutes in order to protest how expensive rates are for satellite dish owners. Which, I feel like some people just have too much time on their hands. We all hate subscription services, but nobody is hijacking satellites. It was broadcast to over 10 million people just because this dude was pissed about having to pay $14 a month. That'd be like me hacking into the Pentagon to try and get rid of a parking ticket. Dude even called himself Captain Midnight. That really sounds like someone who's trying to kill Batman. I'm Captain Midnight and darkness is the last thing you'll see. The crazy thing was that this wasn't actually even fully illegal. He got caught, but there wasn't really a law against it because they just didn't think it was going to happen. So he basically just got a fine. I mean, it was a $5,000 fine, which is a lot, but the dude hijacked a satellite. I mean, they did a study that showed he could have broken into the American missile defense system and he got a fine. So Congress had to literally pass a law being like, hey, we didn't realize that we had to tell you not to do this, but don't hack satellites. That's not even my favorite example of a TV hacking, though. My favorite one comes from this group called Sodafin, which is an artist group in the Czech Republic that does really complex public stunts. They hacked into this TV show called Panorama in the Czech Republic, which basically just shows live feeds of forests or mountain ranges or beaches, just pretty places. They show live feeds of pretty places. And they replaced this feed of this mountain range with a video of the same exact mountain range, except about 5 seconds in, a giant mushroom cloud bomb goes off. This is just a great, hilarious prank. I mean, just a great, fun time. 6 of the members of the artist group were prosecuted by a Czech court, but still, just a great time, especially because most people in the Czech Republic who had this TV station on probably had it on essentially as background music. Nobody's sitting glued to a live feed of a mountain range. You have it on if you're having a party or if it's in the living room of your house, which means that there might have been a group of people at a cocktail party where everyone's talking and nobody's really paying attention. And then suddenly someone's like, hey, what's that? And everybody looks and there's a bomb going off. And there were a lot of people who didn't realize it was a prank. The TV station got a bunch of calls. And that's just, it's obviously, causing a panic in the public, but it is kind of hilarious. Almost every other example of a TV hijacking is just porn being put on the TV. My personal theory about that is that probably a lot of the time it was an accident. I mean, remember, this was before computers existed, so people had to come up with creative places to store their porn. But back to the Max Headroom incident. Unlike those other examples that I talked about, there's no obvious explanation for this one. And that's kind of what makes it so intriguing. That, and also the like overall sinister tone of it. Like, this really has kind of like a Joker-y feel. So the main theory for how he did it was that he got one of those portable broadcasting things that like mobile news crews use, and pointed it directly at the right spot on the Sears Tower. And this would have been like a really precise spot. It's not like you just have to point it at the Sears Tower. You'd really have to know the exact place to point it at. The crazy thing is that in order for this signal he was broadcasting to be strong enough, he essentially would have had to be within eyeshot of Sears Tower itself. So somebody sat within eyeshot of Sears Tower, one of the busiest parts of Chicago, with a piece of professional grade broadcasting equipment for 4 hours and got away scot-free. There were no witnesses. He didn't even leave any clues. Obviously, as these interruptions were happening, the operators of the station were scrambling to fix the problem, especially during like the minute and a half one, the second one. But in their words, I mean, they were interviewed afterwards and they basically just said, no, we were helpless. This guy totally found a crack in the system and there was nothing we could do. We just had to wait for him to stop broadcasting, which really speaks to the kind of technical expertise that this guy had, whoever he was, because he basically just checkmated people who it was their job to make sure this didn't happen. You have to empathize with the horror that these people probably felt as they sat and watched this increasingly weird transmission of some kind of like super villainy thing. I mean, they had no idea it was going to stop at a minute and 30 seconds. It could have kept going for hours. He was basically mocking these people. This is part of the reason that there are essentially only two theories as to who Max Headroom actually was. A, he was a member of the Chicago underground hacker community, or B, he was a disgruntled employee of the very same TV station that he hacked. Either way, it was definitely someone with an engineering background. So the Captain Midnight hijacking that I talked about earlier happened only a year before this. So the FBI and the FCC actually took this very seriously, and both of them did intense investigations of their own. Neither of them found any leads. And 40 years later, nobody has come forward to claim it. Honestly, I have a tremendous amount of respect for that, because the thing is that the statute of limitations passed in 1992. So whoever this guy was could come forward with no repercussions, but he still hasn't. This just shows a true commitment to chaos, right? Like, this guy wasn't trying to get famous. He wasn't trying to get rich. As far as we can tell, there was literally no reason for him to do it, besides a sincere desire to fuck with the people of Chicago. And I can get behind that. I guess there are other reasons why he might not come forward. I mean, he did do some pretty crazy stuff in that video, but hey, you know, dildos and butt stuff are cool now, so no big deal, really. Like, Max Headroom could probably get some clout with Gen Z. Speaking of which, probably the main clue as to what this guy's mind state was, or what his mission was, if you want to call it that, comes from the mask he was wearing, the Max Headroom mask. So Max Headroom was a character from a popular TV show. He was essentially an artificial intelligence news anchor from the future, in a world where it was actually illegal for you to turn off your TV. And the character had also done promotions on TV and commercials for new Coke. The hijacker referenced this by holding up a can of Pepsi and then throwing it away. So wearing this mask is clearly a bit of a fuck you to advertising and to consumers who so readily allow themselves to be propagandized. It is possible to see the Max Headroom incident as some kind of creepy wake-up call for all the people who are like sitting in front of the TV with their eyes glazed over, not really paying attention to what they're watching. The guy could be like hoping to jar them into a realization about what they're allowing into their subconscious. But this is like a stretch. I mean, it seems a lot more likely that the guy was just a troublemaker. All right, as a bonus, I actually want to talk about another hijacking that is probably the funniest one that I read about while I was researching this video. It's called the Southern Television Broadcast Interruption, and it happened when a group of hippies hijacked a TV station in southern England in 1977. Basically, all they did was they played an audio message that was supposed to be coming from a member of the Ashtar galactic command. This message told humanity to abandon its weapons so that it could achieve a higher plane of consciousness. I love this one because of just how clearly it shows the blind idealism of the 60s and 70s, along with some of the stupidity. Like, what did these people really even think? Did they think the people of southern England were just going to be like, oh my God, we're being contacted by the members of the Ashtar Galactic Command? I guess we better put down our weapons then. And what even is a higher plane of consciousness? Like, that's not even clear. Like, once these people put their weapons down, were they just gonna float off into the clouds and start glowing and shit? It's just a super vague reward, and you would think if you were gonna get someone to do something as serious as end wars, you would need to be pretty fucking specific about what they were gonna get. And the funny thing is, because they were lying, even if in the best case scenario these people actually did put their weapons down, they would immediately realize that they're not entering a higher plane of consciousness, and that the whole thing had been a scam, and that the Ashtar Galactic Republic or whatever is just bullshit made up by some hippies. And then of course the first thing that they would do is pick their weapons up again and go try to take that diamond mine or whatever they were doing. I mean, there wasn't even a war going on there at the time. The people probably didn't have any weapons. They heard that and they were like, put down your weapons. What do you mean, this cooking knife that I'm holding? It's lunchtime. They also, in like the opening couple of lines, brought up astrology, which is just hilarious, right? Like, this is a highly advanced alien race, and yes, we have astrology too. The funniest part though is that they literally only hijacked one TV station. Like, an alien race is not just gonna hijack one station in southern England. They're gonna hijack everything. But you know what? Hats off for trying. All right, that is the video. Like it, subscribe to me, or whatever. You know the things. Yeah, just thank you. Good night.